Hi guys, what's up? I'm RichA and you're watching RichA TV. It's wrong, I can't make right. I love the bird. So guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Halloween special video. So you guys have three exciting things to look forward to in this video. Number one, I'm going to be doodling some Halloween related art on my iPad, so you guys get to see that. Number two, I'm actually going to be sharing the art that I made in this video for you all to use as free wallpapers. Yes, absolutely free. So if you guys like what I made here, then just check out the link in the description and get your wallpaper, and I have it in different colors, so yeah, whatever suits your aesthetic. And number three, while you guys are watching me draw the spooky Halloween doodles, you guys actually get to listen to two creepypastas that I am going to narrate to you. So this is the first time I'm actually trying narration, and it was difficult. I think I messed up here and there, but I'm gonna add subtitles for the times that I did. Anyway, don't judge me, just enjoy the stories and let me know if you enjoyed this video. See ya!
My last Halloween. Halloween used to be my favorite holiday. It was the one time of the year you could be anything you wanted to be. You could draw out your darkest desires and display them for the world to see. No one would think you were odd for being the person you always wanted to be. There was no judgment for your choice of attire, and oftentimes you were commended for that choice. Then, at the end of the night, you received a reward for your efforts in the form of a bag full of candy. I am far too old to go door to door begging for treats, but I enjoy watching my children do the same. Weeks in advance, we let them pick their costumes. They are far too young to delve into the ghastly and usually end up picking a character of a popular movie or TV show. I simply take my pictures and urge them on to each doorway. I always remind them to say trick or treat before the door opens. It has been this way for a few years now, but I am starting to question the tradition, especially after visiting 113 Forest Road. This past year, we made the rounds of our local neighborhood. We made sure to only approach homes that had their porch light on, which was the unspoken rule. Our night had almost come to an end when we reached a home that had been vacant for the last 2 seasons. It was the largest within our neighborhood, towering at 2 stories when all others only had 1 level. It was a large brick Victorian monstrosity that may have once been beautiful, but the landscape had long needed work. It was the house most kids made stories about, and when we saw the dim glow of that yellow bulb, I was unsure of letting my children approach. My oldest begged to ring the doorbell, and my youngest simply wanted more candy. I was outnumbered and relented at their pleas. My wife sat within the idling vehicle while I followed close behind. The two made their way up the steps and I waited at the bottom. Like always, I reminded them of what to say. My oldest son held his brother's hand and pressed the lighted button. Ringing, much like church bells, echoed from within the house for a moment before returning to silence. After a few seconds, they turned to me with questioning looks. I had noticed a moving truck parked outside the home earlier in the month and knew someone must live there, but I had not seen them. There was no car in the driveway and I did not see any lights on inside. I started to think they were simply gone and left the light on in case it was dark by the time they returned. I waved to my children to come back to the car and told them we would just head home. The look of disappointment on their faces told me they were not ready to end the night just yet. Their faces lit up as the door creaked to life and a voice beckoned them to wait. "Trick or treat!" They both screamed with excitement. A feeling rolled in me like thunder, and a signal of danger rang in my head. Something was not right. If they were home all this time, where was the car I had seen sitting the driveway the last few weeks? I instinctively advanced onto my children, taking the steps in leaps. A feeling inside told me they should not go toward that voice, and I called for them to stop as they turned toward the door. "I choose both." The voice seemed strained, like that of a lifetime smoker. Two ragged hands shot from the parted pathway and drew both of my little boys inside. Their screams echoed in my head. My adrenaline shot me forward, but my body slammed against a closing door. I pounded repeatedly, screaming obscenities of every nature. My body shook violently as my world became a spiral of despair. The whole scene drew the attention of my wife, and soon she was right behind me. In an effort to find the entry, I took a step back, lifted my right foot, and dropped it full force into the hardwood. The door frame shattered, allowing the barrier to fly freely into the darkness. I cried out in terror for my little boys as I rushed through each room. My entire reason for living had been snatched up in an instant, and I had been too late to stop it. When the house had been searched completely with no results, my wife phoned the authorities through the walls of agony. We both held each other until sirens lit up our tiny neighborhood. It has been a year now, and we still have no answer as to what happened to our children. My wife distanced herself from me, and I'm sure she blames me for what happened. I don't fault her for that. I blame myself as well. If I had not let them go to that door or listened to my feelings sooner, they would both still be here. Halloween is no longer a time of fun for us, but a reminder of our mistakes. I don't even leave my house on that night, and even the sight of a pumpkin makes tears stream down my face. The drive home from work is especially hard, witnessing the houses that decorate for the occasion. I'm almost in a panic before I close myself within the safety of my home. Please, if you read this, don't let your kids visit 113 Forest Road on Halloween. A strange ambulance. It was Halloween night, and my friends and I were driving to a local graveyard at the edge of town. We were too old to trick or treat and too shy to attend any parties, so we found ourselves piling into my car and heading to a cemetery in the dead of night. It was my crazy idea to spend the eeriest night of the year amongst the dead, and after much convincing, my friends Buck and Daisy eventually agreed. I wanted to be there as it turned midnight, the witching hour. It said that the veil between our world and the spiritual world is thinnest on Halloween. The night was cold and empty. The stars stood bright and alone in the expansive black sky that seemed to stretch on forever. The old cemetery was worn and overgrown, with tall, thick grass sprouting out amongst the tombstones from neglect. Some of the graves were as old as the 1800s, and Civil War soldiers were even buried there. We parked the car at the foot of the hill and climbed out of the vehicle. armed only with a flashlight. Buck and Daisy had gotten used to me dragging them along on my adventures. This wasn't the first time they'd been forced to pal along with me on one of my strange graveyard trips. They felt especially obligated to go this time, however, being Halloween and all. As I repeatedly told them, it only happens one time a year. The graveyard consisted of dirt pathways climbing an old grass-covered hill, which was quite steep in some sections. Hardly the best place to bury the dead. We traversed the rough incline, carefully stepping through the tall grass and avoiding the grave plots masked under a thick layer of foliage. I shined the way with my flashlight as Buck and Daisy followed behind. "Why do you get the only flashlight?" asked Daisy. "I told you guys to bring your own lights," I replied. "We didn't think we'd actually be going through with this." "Well, whose fault is that?" We made it to the first dirt path and stopped. The headstone glistened as I shined the flashlight around. We listened carefully, and the night was completely quiet. We felt entirely isolated. No one else seemed to be around for miles. I shut off my flashlight, plunging us into total darkness. With no artificial light anywhere, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It was the same as closing your eyes. I clicked back on my flashlight. Moving my flashlight around once more, I caught two shining yellow lights. "What the heck is that?" asked Buck, startled. I took a step closer. From among the grass hopped out a small rabbit with yellow eyeshine illuminated in the light. We breathed a sigh of relief and felt a little silly for being concerned. The rabbit took off further up the hill of the old graveyard, with a tall blade of grass hanging from its mouth. We were just about to hike up to the next dirt path when we heard it, the sound of a distant siren approaching. My first thought was that it was the police and that we were about to be told to leave or something. But as we all turned around, we saw the strangest of sights. The red glowing lights of an ambulance approaching. With our solitude broken, we stood staring in the direction of the graveyard's entrance. We saw the red lights shine through the scraggly branches of the nearby autumn trees and watched as the ambulance made its way down Cemetery Drive towards us with its loud siren blaring. Something seemed off about the siren though. It didn't sound the same as a typical emergency vehicle. It was an old siren, slowly whining out a low and lonesome cry. The ambulance pulled up and came to a stop at the bottom of the hill, just behind my car. The siren stopped abruptly. The red lights went out. I looked down at my watch. Midnight on the dot. Buck, Daisy and I looked at each other, unsure what to do and what to think about this sudden visitor. Why would an ambulance stop at a cemetery? I thought. If this was some town officials trying to get us to leave, it was an odd method of doing so. Each of us waited for the other to say something. Hello? Daisy finally cried out to the bottom of the hill. No response. We could see the vague silhouette of the driver, but nothing else. They just sat there, completely stationary. We thought about walking down the hill to see what they wanted, but something within us told us not to. We stood silently once more. I shined my flashlight down, but the beam couldn't reach the window of the vehicle. "Who goes there?" shouted Buck. Still no response. Then suddenly, the driver began beeping the horn loudly. Loud, sharp beeps rang out through the night. First 2 short, quick beeps, then a loud honk, followed by complete silence. "What is this? Morse code?" asked Daisy. As if in reply, the vehicle began honking again in rapid succession. I could see the silhouette of the driver moving and thrashing around frantically while honking the horn. They also appeared to be pounding their head with their fists and even smashing their face into the steering wheel. The siren and lights turned on, then off, and then on again in a strange, almost musical rhythm. Then silence. "What do you want?" Buck yelled in a louder and more forceful tone than before. The vehicle's door began to open. We instinctively backed up. The door swung open and out stepped the driver, illuminated by the dull glow of the vehicle's interior cabin light. It was a pale old woman with long stringy hair, a scrawny and bony figure wearing only what appeared to be a white gown. There was something almost ghostly about the woman. It was as if she was comprised entirely of paper mache, a haunting figure like that of a corpse. Her eyes seemed bloodshot, bruised and tired. They imitated a hollow sadness indescribable. She looked at us as if looking through us. She extended out one of her long, thin arms and curled in the old bent fingers on her wrinkled hand. She beckoned for us to come down the hill. We stood unmoved. The thought occurred to me that perhaps this was a spirit who had crossed over for Halloween night. Perhaps this was my exact reason for traveling to the graveyard. I glanced down at my watch. It read 12:04. The timing was so eerie, as if it was the midnight hour that had called her there. These fanciful notions quickly faded though, as I looked at the horrified faces of my friend. I gazed back at the crone-like figure at the foot of the hill. She beckoned once more and then seemed to grow impatient. She let out a loud, blood-curdling scream that could shatter windows. I covered my hands over my ears and waited for her to stop. In a frantic motion, she quickly turned, jumped back into the cab of the ambulance and shut the door with a loud thud. The siren roared to life in a bright display of flashing red, and the bizarre ambulance backed up. The vehicle then turned around in the road and sped away along Cemetery Drive. "Let's get the heck out of here!" exclaimed Daisy. Terrified, we hurried down the hill to my car with hearts racing. "That does it!" announced Buck. "We are never going on one of your trips again." At this point, I honestly couldn't blame them. I drove home as nervous as can be, with my hands shaking all the while. We saw no sign of the ambulance or the lady for the rest of the night. None of us slept a wink or turned off any lights once we got to my house. It wasn't until the next day, November 1st, that we read the news. A woman from a nearby mental hospital had stolen an ambulance and was reportedly seen by locals driving strangely around the town, rhythmically honking the horn and playing the siren in strange patterns.
if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with your friends who might want to get spooked this season. And of course, subscribe to my channel and click on the bell icon for more. By the way, how do you like my hairstyle? I look like a pineapple.